Sometimes the wrong choice leads to the most unexpected destiny. Maya Brooks whispered to herself as she stepped out into the crisp Manhattan night, her heels clicking against the pavement with each hesitant step, the neon lights reflecting off the wet streets and catching in her deep brown eyes as she clutched the envelope that would change everything. Betrayal still weighed heavily on her heart. The memory of a love she once trusted now shattered into quiet fragments, and yet here she was, rushing toward a stranger who promised nothing but a marriage of convenience, a fleeting escape from the pain. And as she arrived at the towering glass building that housed Alexander Knight's world of untold wealth, the cold steel doors loomed like a threshold to another universe, their mirrored surfaces reflecting both her uncertainty and the faint flicker of determination that refused to fade. And when the doors slid open with a whisper, the scent of polished mahogany and faint citrus filled her senses, a delicate balance of luxury and precision that spoke louder than words, leading her through the grand foyer where crystal chandeliers hung like frozen constellations, casting fractured patterns of light across marble floors so smooth they seemed to swallow sound. And there he was, Alexander Knight, impeccably dressed in a midnight tailored suit, his presence commanding yet measured, eyes the color of storm clouds scanning her with a quiet curiosity, every inch of him a paradox of distance and magnetism that made her heart race despite the rational walls she had built around it. And as she approached the contract he had laid on the obsidian counter, the weight of its words pressing like invisible chains, she realized that this hasty decision, born of desperation and a desire to reclaim control over her shattered life, was more than a simple arrangement. It was the first step into a world she had never imagined, a life filled with opulence and power where every gesture mattered and nothing was left to chance. Yet beneath the rigid structure, Maya sensed hints of warmth, subtle in the curl of his lips, the shift of his stance, small cracks in the facade that invited curiosity and hope. And as she lifted the pen to sign, her fingers trembled not with fear, but with a strange anticipation, aware that beyond this act lay a labyrinth of emotions, alliances, and revelations that would test her resolve and reveal strengths she had not yet discovered. The air between them charged with unspoken tension, the soft hum of distant elevators and muffled city sounds accentuating the stillness, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in the quiet grandeur. And in that suspended moment, Maya caught a glimpse of herself reflected in the glossy surface of the desk. The determined young woman who had endured betrayal, now standing at the precipice of transformation, realizing that what began as a desperate flight from heartbreak might very well be the catalyst for a journey that would change her forever. And as Alexander extended a hand, not with arrogance, but with a controlled invitation, she met his gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them that whatever lay ahead, this encounter would set the stage for a story neither of them could yet predict. The chandeliers above shimmering like tiny beacons of destiny, the city beyond glowing with possibility, and Maya stepped forward into the contract, into the unknown, with a courage she hadn't known she possessed, aware that every choice, every glance, every measured word would ripple through the unfolding narrative. And even as the doors closed softly behind her, sealing them in a world of wealth, secrecy, and unexpected emotion, the first chapter of an extraordinary story had begun, leaving her pulse quickened, her mind racing, and the promise of revelation lingering just beyond the next room, a tantalizing whisper that destiny had many surprises yet to unveil. The soft hum of the elevator carried Maya Brooks and Alexander Knight up through the gleaming floors of the skyscraper, each level a testament to the empire he had built with exacting precision, the glass walls stretching into the night sky and reflecting the city lights like shards of crystal, as the doors opened onto a long hallway lined with abstract art and subtle lighting. The warmth of polished oak underfoot contrasted sharply with the chill of the air-conditioned space, and Maya found herself pausing to adjust her posture, to steady her racing pulse, aware that every step forward was a step deeper into a life both dazzling and intimidating, her fingers brushing lightly against the smooth fabric of her dress as if drawing courage from its weight. And Alexander's presence beside her was a constant, measured energy, silent yet commanding, every glance calculated, every movement precise, creating a rhythm that seemed to pull her along with an unspoken understanding of boundaries and expectations. When they reached the expansive office, the panoramic windows offering a view of the river winding through the heart of Manhattan, the lights twinkling like distant stars, Alexander gestured for her to sit, his eyes not leaving hers as he placed the contract on the sleek black desk, the paper crisp, edges sharp, a symbol of the life she had stepped into. And he began to explain the terms, his voice even and controlled. Yet beneath the cadence there was an unmistakable warmth, a subtle invitation to see him beyond the formalities, while Maya listened, absorbing each word, measuring its impact, and noticing the small details that suggested a life carefully curated, from the arrangement of books on the shelves to the selection of glassware on the sideboard, every element a reflection of meticulous thought and quiet sophistication, yet also hinting at the vulnerabilities that came with the responsibility of wielding immense influence. As the conversation unfolded, she allowed herself to relax slightly, recognizing in his precise mannerisms and deliberate phrasing that this was a man accustomed to control, yet not immune to connection, a paradox that intrigued her despite the cautious instincts cultivated from past betrayals. And when he offered a moment of quiet reflection, stepping back to allow her space, Maya found herself considering the possibilities, the challenges, and the unexpected opportunities embedded in this uncharted chapter of her life. The city below pulsing with life as if echoing the mixture of excitement and apprehension within her, and she realized that this encounter, initiated by desperation, had the potential to evolve into a narrative of trust, resilience, and discovery. The soft glow of the office lights casting long shadows that danced across the polished floors and framed them both in a suspended moment of anticipation, a delicate balance between distance and intimacy, order and spontaneity, where every choice could ripple outward, shaping not only their immediate interactions, but also the unforeseen trajectory of a story that was only beginning to unfold, leaving Maya with a sense of quiet determination, a readiness to navigate the complexities ahead, and a flicker of curiosity about the man whose life intersected so dramatically with hers, promising revelations, challenges, and perhaps, in time, an unexpected alignment of hearts amidst the calculated architecture of wealth, power, and destiny. The soft glow of the city lights spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Maya Brooks wandered toward the seating area, her reflection in the glass a reminder of the woman who had survived heartbreak and now faced the unknown with cautious anticipation. Alexander Knight followed, his footsteps quiet yet deliberate, a steady presence that seemed to anchor the room without constraining it. And as he poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter, the faint scent of polished wood and subtle citrus lingering in the air, Maya allowed herself a moment to observe the meticulous order of his office, the arrangement of awards, books, and framed photographs, each telling a story of achievement and discipline, a life shaped by careful decisions and relentless ambition. And yet beneath the precision, she sensed the humanity, the quiet moments of reflection that hinted at depth beyond the public persona, a complexity that drew her attention and invited curiosity. They sat across from each other, the contract between them resting on the desk like a silent promise, and Alexander began to outline the expectations with a calm, even voice, emphasizing clarity and fairness, the words deliberate, chosen to convey respect without diminishing authority, while Maya listened intently, noting the subtle inflections that suggested he was willing to adapt, to consider her perspective, and to navigate this union as a partnership rather than a mere arrangement. And as the conversation flowed, she felt the tension ease slightly, replaced by a budding understanding that while the circumstances were unorthodox, they were also an opportunity, a doorway into a life of potential and new experiences, the hum of the city below a steady backdrop to the unfolding dialogue, each glance, each measured pause, a communication beyond words. After a time, Alexander gestured toward the panoramic view, the river winding through the heart of Manhattan, the lights twinkling like distant stars, and Maya felt the enormity of her decision settle in, realizing that this world was both dazzling and exacting, a place where her choices would echo beyond the walls of the office, where every action could shape perceptions and relationships. yet also a space where her own agency mattered, where she could assert presence, insight, and resilience amidst the grandeur and expectation. And in that moment, she glimpsed a path forward, one that required courage, awareness, and a willingness to explore the nuances of trust and connection. And as Alexander spoke of upcoming engagements and responsibilities, the rhythm of his words, steady and measured, provided a framework that was at once reassuring and challenging, inviting Maya to consider how she would navigate this environment while staying true to herself. And when the discussion turned to shared decisions, from social commitments to professional appearances, she recognized the subtle power dynamics, the delicate balance of influence and autonomy, and the potential for mutual respect and understanding to grow. The atmosphere charged with the promise of collaboration, discovery, and unexpected alignment of intentions. And as the evening deepened, the city outside shimmering in reflection of the office lights, Maya felt a mixture of anticipation and determination, aware that this chapter was only beginning, that the choices made in these hours would resonate through coming days, and that within the structure of contracts and expectations lay the possibility for connection, growth, and the unfolding of a story neither of them could yet predict, a narrative shaped by patience, insight, and the quiet power of two individuals learning to navigate a shared world. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long golden streaks across the polished marble floors of Alexander Knight's penthouse, and Maya Brooks stood by the window, the soft fabric of her dress catching the light as she considered the night before, the conversation, the subtle glances, and the unspoken tension that had lingered between them, a mixture of curiosity, caution, and a tentative connection. Alexander entered silently, his presence steady and deliberate, the faint scent of cedar and citrus announcing him before he spoke. And as he approached the seating area, he gestured toward the small table set for breakfast, each detail arranged with meticulous care, from the folded napkins to the fresh fruit glistening in the sunlight. And Maya felt a quiet admiration for the precision that matched the controlled authority he exuded, yet beneath the surface, there was a softness, a consideration in his actions that hinted at humanity behind the formidable exterior. And when they sat, the light catching the subtle angles of his face, he spoke with measured words about the day ahead, the meetings, decisions, and responsibilities. Yet each sentence carried an undercurrent of thoughtfulness, a recognition that Maya's perspective mattered in this new world she had entered. And as she listened, absorbing the rhythm of his voice and the cadence of his gestures, she realized that the contract they had signed was more than a formal document. It was a framework for mutual respect and shared discovery, and the possibilities it offered were as much about personal growth as about navigating a life of wealth and influence. And as they discussed plans for the upcoming week, Maya noted the balance Alexander maintained between authority and consideration, how he allowed space for input while still guiding the direction, a dynamic that was unfamiliar yet intriguing. And in that moment, she felt a flicker of confidence, a sense that she could navigate this world not merely as an observer, but as an active participant, contributing insight, intelligence, and presence. And when a soft breeze stirred the sheer curtains, catching the golden light and casting delicate patterns across the floor, she was reminded that the city outside, vibrant and alive, mirrored the unfolding complexity of their relationship, full of opportunity, challenge, and unexpected beauty. And as breakfast concluded, Alexander suggested a walk through the rooftop terrace to review upcoming projects, the expansive view of Manhattan offering both perspective and quiet contemplation. And Maya, feeling the pulse of the city beneath her, sensed the shift from uncertainty to engagement, from apprehension to cautious anticipation, understanding that each step forward required attentiveness, reflection, and courage. And as they walked side by side, the hum of traffic, the distant honking, and the sparkle of sunlight on the river blended into a soundtrack that underscored the delicate balance of control, trust, and possibility. And Maya realized that while the world they inhabited was extraordinary, it was also fragile, requiring awareness, adaptability, and an openness to discovering layers of connection and understanding that she had not expected. And as they paused to overlook the skyline, Alexander's gaze met hers, steady, measured, inviting yet respectful. and in that silent exchange, Maya felt the first true alignment of curiosity and trust, a moment suspended between past doubts and future potential, and she understood that the days ahead would test boundaries, reveal character, and illuminate paths toward partnership, insight, and a story that was only just beginning to unfold in the light of a new day, rich with promise and the unspoken question of what discoveries and revelations awaited in the chapters to come. By midday, the sunlight had shifted, warming the polished surfaces of Alexander Knight's office and highlighting the subtle gold accents that adorned the room, and Maya Brooks moved with a deliberate grace, her steps measured as she navigated the space that once felt alien but was slowly becoming familiar, each detail speaking of a life curated with precision and intention, from the arrangement of leather-bound books to the delicate placement of fresh flowers on the side table, and Alexander watched with a quiet intensity, his posture upright yet relaxed, the weight of authority tempered by a careful attentiveness that seemed to consider her perspective in every gesture. And as they discussed the itinerary for an important board meeting, Maya noticed the balance in his voice, a mixture of clarity and patience, emphasizing collaboration while maintaining decisiveness, and she found herself drawn into the rhythm of their interaction, the subtle cues, the pauses, the exchange of ideas, each moment building a bridge of understanding and mutual respect, and when he suggested reviewing a proposal together, guiding her through the documents with a careful explanation, she felt the first true sense of partnership, a recognition that her input held value, and that the structure of their arrangement allowed for contribution without undermining the framework that had brought them together. And as the hours unfolded, they moved through topics ranging from financial strategy to charitable initiatives, each conversation layered with depth, insight, and the occasional light-hearted observation that revealed glimpses of personality beneath the composed exterior, the city beyond the windows providing a vibrant backdrop, the sounds of traffic, distant sirens, and the faint hum of activity threading through the room like a subtle rhythm, and Maya, absorbing the magnitude of her surroundings, understood that navigating this world required attention, intelligence, and adaptability, yet also offered opportunities for growth, learning, and connection that she had not anticipated. And as they paused for a moment to consider the implications of a particularly complex decision, their eyes met across the desk, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a shared understanding of responsibility, potential, and the emerging dynamic of trust. And when Alexander excused himself briefly to take a call, the quiet left in his absence allowed Maya a chance to reflect on the evolving relationship, the initial tension giving way to intrigue and the promise of collaborative engagement, and she realized that while the contract had defined the parameters of their arrangement, the experiences of the day, the careful navigation of dialogue and observation, were already shaping the contours of something far richer, a tapestry of respect, curiosity, and discovery. And as the afternoon light slanted across the room, illuminating the subtle textures and colors of the space, Maya felt a quiet determination, an awareness that each interaction, each choice, and each thoughtful observation contributed to a narrative that was unfolding with deliberate complexity. And she understood that the journey ahead would demand patience, reflection, and a willingness to embrace both challenge and opportunity. And in that suspended moment of clarity, she recognized that the story they were beginning to write together was filled with possibilities, surprises, and the subtle power of two individuals learning to navigate a shared world while retaining their own agency, insight, and growing understanding. As the late afternoon sun poured through the tall windows, casting warm amber light across the sleek surfaces of Alexander Knight's office, Maya Brooks felt a subtle shift within herself, a quiet determination that had been building since morning, the rhythm of the city below echoing her heartbeat as she moved with deliberate care to arrange documents on the polished desk, each folder a symbol of responsibility, opportunity, and the complex interplay of influence that defined this new chapter. And Alexander watched from the side, his posture relaxed yet attentive, the faint tilt of his head suggesting consideration rather than command. And as he pointed out key points in the reports, his measured tone emphasizing clarity and collaboration, Maya realized that their interactions were no longer solely defined by the parameters of a contract, but by a growing awareness of shared goals, mutual respect, and the delicate emergence of trust. And when they paused to review a presentation, the sunlight glinting on the edges of the glass walls, she noticed the subtle details that had earlier gone unnoticed, from the arrangement of awards to the selection of art on the walls, each choice revealing an intention behind every facet of this world, a structure built not only on wealth, but on careful thought, foresight, and a nuanced understanding of responsibility. And in that moment, she understood that the opportunity before her was more than participation. It was a chance to shape, influence, and contribute, the interaction of intellect, observation, and awareness allowing her to navigate the intricate dance of presence and autonomy. And as Alexander suggested a brief walk to the balcony to review upcoming engagements, the cityscape spread out below them, glowing like a canvas of potential. Maya felt the pulse of possibilities, the challenge of integration, and the subtle thrill of discovery. Each step along the marble floors reinforcing her agency and the sense of being seen not merely as a guest in this world, but as an active participant, capable of insight, decision, and careful judgment. And as they reached the balcony, the breeze carrying the distant sounds of traffic and faint hum of life, Maya reflected on the evolving nature of their connection, the balance of authority and collaboration, and the emergence of moments where understanding and trust threaded through their actions, creating a dynamic both structured and responsive. And as Alexander leaned slightly against the railing, discussing the nuances of an upcoming philanthropic event, the weight of his words tempered by a gentle curiosity toward her perspective, Maya felt the first hints of genuine partnership, the recognition that her voice and choices mattered within the framework of this intricate, opulent, and exacting environment. And with the skyline stretching endlessly before them, the interplay of light and shadow, power and nuance, and anticipation and reflection set the stage for a series of discoveries, decisions, and revelations that promised to shape the unfolding narrative of collaboration, influence, and emerging understanding, leaving Maya poised at the threshold of a day that would test her intellect, patience, and discernment, yet also offer unprecedented insight, growth, and the subtle promise of connection that could transform both her experience and the contours of this shared journey into something unexpectedly profound. Evening descended softly over the city, bathing Alexander Knight's penthouse in a gentle golden hue that filtered through the expansive windows, and Maya Brooks moved deliberately along the sleek floors, the subtle rustle of her dress the only sound breaking the serene atmosphere, her mind replaying the events of the day, the conversations, the decisions, and the unexpected moments of clarity that had begun to bridge the gap between uncertainty and comprehension. Alexander stood near the desk, reviewing documents with precise attention to detail, the rhythm of his actions steady and composed, and when he glanced up, their eyes met, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them, a recognition of the trust, patience, and mutual respect slowly growing. And as he gestured for her to join him in reviewing a financial proposal, Maya noticed the careful balance in his tone, the way he presented options while inviting her input, allowing her perspective to influence decisions without undermining the structure that defined their shared responsibilities. And in that interplay, she sensed a growing alignment, a rhythm of collaboration and understanding that was new and invigorating, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance like a constellation mapped out beneath them, reflecting the complexity, opportunity, and unexpected beauty of the path she had chosen. And as they discussed strategies for an upcoming event, the nuances of communication, observation, and careful judgment unfolded, each exchange building not only comprehension, but also a subtle sense of connection, the kind of partnership where attentiveness, insight, and discretion created a dynamic that was simultaneously structured and flexible. And Maya felt herself becoming attuned to the rhythms of this environment, the cadence of Alexander's expectations, and the emerging possibility that her presence and decisions mattered in ways she had not anticipated. And as the conversation continued, she began to notice the faintest glimpses of warmth beneath his composed exterior, the small gestures, subtle expressions, and deliberate pauses that hinted at the depth and complexity of character beneath the polished and controlled facade. And in that recognition, a quiet excitement mingled with resolve, the awareness that while this world demanded precision, intellect, and adaptability, it also offered moments of discovery, reflection, and nuanced interaction. And when Alexander excused himself briefly to take a call, the silence left in his wake allowed Maya a moment of contemplation, a chance to absorb the lessons of the day, to measure her own responses, and to consider how trust, observation, and engagement were shaping her role within this intricate and impressive world. And as the city outside shifted from the gold of dusk to the soft blues and purples of twilight, the air carrying the faint hum of life from the streets below, Maya felt the intertwining of anticipation, responsibility, and curiosity, understanding that the unfolding narrative required patience, discernment, and a willingness to embrace both challenge and opportunity, and that each interaction, every thoughtful observation, and the subtle dance of presence and influence would contribute to a story of emerging understanding, partnership, and discovery, leaving her poised at the threshold of insight, aware that the choices made in these quiet, deliberate moments would echo through the days to come, shaping a journey of trust, growth, and the potential for connection that was only just beginning to reveal its promise. The night had settled over Manhattan, a soft veil of navy and indigo stretching across the skyline, and Maya Brooks stood at the edge of the terrace, the city lights flickering like distant fireflies beneath her, each one reflecting the complexity and grandeur of the world she had stepped into. Her thoughts moving in tandem with the rhythm of her heartbeat as she considered the journey from the moment she had first entered Alexander Knight's life to the subtle but undeniable connection that was emerging between them. Alexander appeared beside her, his presence measured, the tailored fabric of his midnight suit catching the glow of streetlights below, and as he extended a hand, not for ceremony but for guidance, she took it, feeling a quiet reassurance in the gesture, a balance between respect and collaboration, and together they moved along the terrace, the faint scent of polished stone mingling with the cool night air, the sounds of the city below punctuating the serene atmosphere, with gentle hums of life and distant movement. And as they stopped near the glass railing, the reflection of lights in the river creating a shimmering canvas of color, Alexander spoke with calm deliberation about upcoming decisions, the phrasing precise, yet imbued with subtle consideration for her perspective, and Maya listened intently, noting the care in his word choice, the attention to detail, and the nuanced guidance that offered insight without imposing authority. And in that exchange, she began to recognize the depth of potential in their interactions, the delicate interplay between structure and flexibility, responsibility and autonomy, each conversation shaping the evolving dynamic, fostering trust and mutual respect. And as the wind brushed gently across the terrace, lifting strands of her hair, Maya felt a growing awareness of her capacity to influence, contribute, and navigate this world while remaining true to herself, the cityscape stretching endlessly, a reminder of possibilities yet to be explored. And as Alexander gestured toward a distant horizon where the skyline met the darkened sky, she realized that the path forward was defined not only by circumstance but also by choice, engagement, and a willingness to observe, reflect, and act with intention. And with each moment, the quiet understanding between them deepened, the trust, patience, and subtle alignment of perspectives weaving a tapestry that was simultaneously delicate and resilient. And Maya sensed that this was the threshold of transformation, a moment where perception, insight, and courage intersected to create a space for connection, growth, and the discovery of mutual capability. And as they paused, letting the city lights and soft ambient sounds fill the space between them, she understood that the chapters yet to unfold would demand awareness, adaptability, and thoughtfulness, but also offered the potential for revelation, empowerment, and the quiet but profound recognition of partnership, a journey of shared understanding and emerging alignment that promised to shape not only their immediate experience, but the broader narrative of trust, influence, and the unfolding story that had only just begun beneath the expansive, twinkling sky. The next morning, the sunlight poured into the penthouse, casting long, soft beams across the polished marble floors and glinting off the crystal accents that adorned the space. And Maya Brooks moved with careful, measured steps, her mind replaying the insights from the previous day, the subtle signals, and the developing understanding that had begun to shape her perception of Alexander Knight, whose presence seemed to fill the room with a calm, deliberate energy, every movement precise yet inviting. And as he gestured toward a collection of reports laid neatly on the desk, Maya took her place beside him, absorbing the details and noting the thoughtfulness behind the organization, the way each document, each line of text, and every subtle margin note conveyed a level of planning, foresight, and control that was both impressive and instructive. And as they began to review the financial forecasts and upcoming engagements, Alexander spoke with measured clarity, emphasizing strategic priorities while leaving room for discussion, his tone even yet layered with subtle encouragement. And Maya felt a sense of participation, the realization that her observations, questions, and insights mattered within the broader framework of his world, the hum of the city far below providing a constant, gentle rhythm to their interaction, the lights twinkling like distant stars and casting reflections in the glass panels surrounding them. And as the conversation deepened, the layers of their interaction unfolded with increasing nuance, revealing a balance between authority and collaboration, expectation and opportunity, structure and flexibility. And Maya recognized the growing potential for influence, insight, and meaningful engagement in every decision, every exchange, and every carefully articulated idea. And when they paused to look over projections for an important philanthropic initiative, the thoughtful alignment of numbers, strategy, and purpose underscored the gravity of their work. Yet Alexander's patient guidance allowed space for reflection, subtle interpretation, and meaningful input. And Maya, noting the balance of precision and consideration, felt a quiet confidence, understanding that her role, though new and unexpected, was becoming integral, and that the opportunities to contribute, observe, and shape outcomes were emerging naturally from careful attention, critical thinking, and measured communication. And as the late morning light shifted to a softer, warmer tone, the penthouse seemed to glow with the possibilities of the day, the interplay of natural light and city reflections creating a tapestry that mirrored the unfolding complexity, anticipation, and potential in their interactions. And as Alexander stepped back briefly to take a call, leaving Maya to consider the materials, she felt a sense of ownership, insight, and engagement, aware that each decision, each observation, and each subtle reflection would contribute to a growing narrative of partnership, collaboration, and shared discovery. And as she reviewed the notes once more, the hum of life from the streets below and the soft rustle of the city around them reinforced the awareness that this was both a world of opportunity and responsibility, where attentiveness, thoughtfulness, and careful action could shape outcomes, strengthen understanding, and reveal new dimensions of connection. And Maya realized that the chapters ahead would test not only intellect and observation but patience, adaptability, and creativity, and that the interplay of influence, insight, and emerging trust between her and Alexander had the potential to transform the unfolding story into one defined by engagement, discovery, and the subtle, intricate development of partnership, all set against the vibrant, twinkling backdrop of the city that had become both witness and stage for this evolving journey. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the panoramic windows, casting a warm, golden glow across the polished floors of Alexander Knight's penthouse, and Maya Brooks moved with a careful rhythm, her thoughts tracing the nuances of the day, the interactions, the subtle shifts in expression and tone that hinted at understanding, collaboration, and the tentative building of trust. And as she arranged a set of reports on the sleek, black desk, Alexander approached, his presence steady, measured, the faint scent of cedar and citrus lingering in the air. And when he gestured for her to review the documents together, his voice even and deliberate, she felt a growing sense of engagement, a recognition that her insights and observations were meaningful within the framework of his structured world. And as they worked side by side, analyzing charts, projections, and strategies for an upcoming corporate event, the balance of authority and collaboration unfolded in subtle ways. The precision of his explanations accompanied by a quiet openness to her questions and perspective, and Maya found herself noting every detail, the careful placement of folders, the organization of charts, and the thoughtful manner in which Alexander presented information, each element reflecting a world built on meticulous planning and strategic foresight, yet simultaneously creating space for observation, reflection, and contribution. And as they paused to consider a particularly complex proposal, the soft hum of the city below, the twinkle of distant lights, and the faint ambient sounds from the streets blended into a backdrop that emphasized the focus and significance of the moment. And in that stillness, Maya felt a subtle confidence growing within her, the understanding that her role, while new, had the potential to influence outcomes, shape decisions, and contribute meaningfully to the unfolding narrative of partnership and collaboration. And as Alexander leaned back slightly, allowing her to lead a discussion on potential outcomes, she noted the careful attention he paid to her insights, the nods, the subtle changes in expression that indicated consideration, and the quiet acknowledgement that while the world he inhabited demanded precision and intelligence, it also valued attentiveness, perspective, and nuanced engagement. And when they finally set aside the last of the documents, the golden light stretching across the room, Maya realized the trajectory of their day had transformed the initial uncertainty into a growing sense of purpose, alignment, and emerging trust, the interplay of observation, reflection, and dialogue, establishing a foundation for collaboration and connection. And as she stepped back to glance out at the glittering city skyline, the river reflecting the fading light in a cascade of colors, she felt the subtle thrill of possibility, the awareness that the interactions of this afternoon had set in motion a chain of understanding, insight, and potential that would continue to shape their partnership. The structure of contracts and expectations gradually giving way to moments of genuine alignment, thoughtful engagement, and mutual respect. And in that suspended moment, Maya recognized that the path ahead, though intricate and challenging, held promise for discovery, growth, and the quiet yet profound development of connection, influence, and insight. And as the final rays of sunlight faded and the first stars began to twinkle against the deepening sky, the penthouse seemed to hold its breath, the space between them charged with anticipation, reflection, and the subtle alignment of two individuals learning to navigate a shared world with patience, intelligence, and an emerging understanding that would define the story still unfolding before them. The evening had deepened into a velvet canvas of navy and indigo, the city lights glittering below like scattered gemstones, and Maya Brooks stood near the glass railing of the penthouse terrace, the soft breeze lifting strands of her hair and carrying the distant hum of Manhattan streets into the quiet space. As she reflected on the journey of the day, the careful balance of observation, insight, and subtle negotiation that had shaped every interaction with Alexander Knight, and she realized that the initial uncertainty and hesitation had given way to a growing alignment of purpose, curiosity, and mutual understanding. And as Alexander joined her, his presence calm and deliberate, the tailored midnight suit emphasizing a composed authority tempered by measured attentiveness, he gestured toward the skyline, the river winding like silver ribbons below, and spoke with a steady, reflective tone about the strategic decisions awaiting the next week, his words precise, yet layered with openness to dialogue, consideration, and subtle encouragement. And Maya listened intently, noting the nuanced inflections, the pauses, and the gentle acknowledgments that suggested not only control, but also awareness of her perspective. And in that rhythm of interaction, she felt the quiet power of collaboration, the delicate balance between contribution and deference, structure and adaptability, and the realization that her role within this intricate world was evolving into one of influence, insight, and engagement. And when they shifted their attention to a particular philanthropic initiative, reviewing the projections, contacts, and potential outcomes, Maya recognized the level of thought, care, and intention embedded in every detail, the meticulous planning a testament to a life built on foresight, discipline, and responsibility. And yet, despite the precision, there was a subtle invitation for reflection, interpretation, and thoughtful participation, which allowed her to see that meaningful connection, understanding, and trust could emerge even in a highly structured, high-stakes environment. And as the conversation continued, interspersed with brief moments of contemplative silence, the city below sparkling with movement and life. Maya became increasingly aware of the unfolding dynamic, the balance of attentiveness, judgment, and mutual respect shaping the narrative between them, and each shared observation, each carefully considered insight, and each gentle acknowledgement strengthened the foundation for ongoing collaboration and emergent understanding. And as Alexander stepped back to adjust a document on the desk, the soft rustle of paper and subtle shift in his posture offered a quiet signal of partnership, leaving Maya with a sense of agency, engagement, and subtle anticipation for the decisions yet to come. And in the interplay of light, reflection, and measured communication, she felt the faint thrill of possibility, the awareness that the choices, contributions, and interactions of this evening would ripple into future opportunities, influencing outcomes, perspectives, and the deepening trust that was gradually forming. And as they paused together, gazing out over the cityscape glittering under the night sky, the intricate balance of authority, collaboration, and mutual recognition created a charged yet composed atmosphere, one in which Maya understood that the story they were crafting was not only about decisions and strategy, but about emerging understanding, shared insight, and the quiet power of two individuals navigating a complex, extraordinary world together, each aware of the subtle potentials, challenges, and possibilities that lay ahead. The early morning light crept through the windows of Alexander Knight's penthouse, bathing the room in a gentle, warm glow, and Maya Brooks moved across the marble floors with a sense of quiet purpose, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point, the days of observation, learning, and careful engagement with Alexander now weaving a narrative of understanding and emerging partnership. And as she approached the desk where documents for an important meeting were laid out with meticulous care, she noted the precision in every detail, from the alignment of folders to the deliberate organization of notes and charts, each element reflecting a life built on careful planning, foresight, and strategic thinking. And when Alexander entered, his presence calm and composed, the tailored midnight suit emphasizing a poised authority tempered by measured attentiveness, he gestured for her to sit, inviting her to review the materials alongside him. And as they began to discuss strategies, projections, and potential outcomes, Maya felt a sense of agency and engagement, her observations and insights acknowledged, considered, and integrated into the flow of their conversation, the rhythm of his voice deliberate and steady, each word chosen to convey clarity and expectation while leaving room for collaboration and contribution. And as they worked, the city below glimmered with life, the distant sounds of traffic, faint conversations, and the ambient hum providing a gentle backdrop to the focused intensity of the room. And Maya realized that their interactions were no longer simply structured by the terms of a contract, but by a developing alignment of purpose, understanding, and mutual respect, the subtle signals of attention, acknowledgement, and consideration deepening the trust and insight between them. And when they paused to review a particularly intricate proposal, the sunlight catching the polished surfaces of the desk and reflecting across the room, she noted the delicate interplay of authority and collaboration, structure and flexibility, precision and adaptability, and understood that this dynamic created both opportunity and responsibility, allowing her to participate meaningfully, shape outcomes, and contribute to the evolving narrative with confidence and clarity. And as Alexander leaned back briefly, considering the options presented, the quiet moment offered a chance for reflection, observation, and strategic thought, and Maya felt the subtle satisfaction of growing competence, insight, and influence, recognizing that her contributions were valued and her presence significant. And as they turned their attention to planning the next steps for the upcoming philanthropic event, analyzing schedules, contacts, and potential impacts, she sensed the careful balance Alexander maintained between guidance and openness, authority and respect, ensuring that every decision, suggestion, and adjustment was thoughtfully weighed and considered. And in the interplay of discussion, analysis, and quiet observation, Maya felt the unfolding of a partnership defined not by obligation or hierarchy, but by trust, engagement, and the emerging synergy of two minds learning to navigate a shared, extraordinary world. And as the afternoon light shifted, casting a golden hue across the room and illuminating the city beyond, She recognized that the path forward would demand attentiveness, patience, and thoughtful action, yet held the promise of growth, understanding, and the subtle, profound realization that the story they were writing together was entering a stage of cohesion, collaboration, and emergent connection that could shape not only the immediate decisions and outcomes, but also the deeper narrative of insight, trust, and shared discovery that was only beginning to reveal its full potential. As the first light of dawn crept over the skyline, bathing Alexander Knight's penthouse in soft, golden hues, Maya Brooks stood at the edge of the terrace, the city stretching endlessly below, a tapestry of lights and motion reflecting the intricate complexity of the life she had chosen to step into. And she felt a profound sense of accomplishment and awareness, the culmination of days spent observing, learning, and navigating a world at once dazzling and exacting. And as Alexander joined her, his presence calm, yet commanding, the tailored midnight suit sharp and impeccable, he gestured toward the city with a measured sweep of his hand, highlighting the subtle interplay of power, responsibility, and opportunity that had defined their recent days together. And Maya listened, absorbing not only the words but the intent, nuance, and care behind each observation, recognizing that the growth of their partnership was mirrored in the careful attention to detail, the balance of authority and collaboration, and the emerging trust that now infused their interactions. And as they moved to the indoor seating area, the soft aroma of polished wood mingling with the faint scent of citrus from the morning air, Maya reflected on the progression of their shared journey, the delicate fusion of strategic engagement, thoughtful observation, and emerging insight that had transformed initial uncertainty into a narrative of collaboration, understanding, and mutual respect. And as they sat together reviewing the final plans for an important philanthropic initiative, the light catching the edges of crystal and glass, she felt the weight and significance of each decision, each conversation, and the subtle dynamics that shaped their influence. And Alexander spoke with deliberate clarity, highlighting priorities while simultaneously creating space for her input, his tone both authoritative and inclusive, reinforcing the sense of alignment, purpose, and shared responsibility that had gradually grown between them. And Maya realized that the seemingly transactional nature of their early interactions had evolved into a rich interplay of perspective, observation, and thoughtful participation, where her insights, questions, and reflections were valued and integrated into outcomes. And as they moved through schedules, contacts, and projections, each exchange strengthened the foundation of trust, collaboration, and understanding. The city below humming with life and opportunity as a subtle echo of the vibrancy and potential in their work. And when they paused to consider the broader implications of their decisions, Maya felt the quiet exhilaration of influence, competence, and connection, the awareness that her role, though once tentative, had become an integral part of shaping strategy, outcomes, and the emerging partnership. And as the light of the morning shifted to a warmer, more radiant glow, highlighting the textures of the space and the reflections in the glass panels, she recognized that their shared journey had moved beyond mere structure or contract into a realm defined by insight, engagement, and subtle, profound understanding. And as they stood together on the terrace once more, the river below catching the sunlight and sparkling like scattered diamonds, Maya felt the culmination of trust, collaboration, and emerging alignment, a narrative now enriched with insight, purpose, and possibility, leaving her poised at the threshold of future endeavors, ready to embrace both challenge and discovery, and fully aware that the story they had begun to craft together, built on observation, reflection, patience, and careful engagement, had reached a stage of cohesion and clarity, a place where connection, partnership, and opportunity intertwined, to create a foundation for whatever extraordinary chapters awaited beyond the horizon.